Going into this night, where do we stand?
This is where we stood coming into the night, 268 to 204, so clearly an advantage for Secretary Clinton.
Take a look here. If Donald Trump wins tonight, no matter who they voted for, take a look at these numbers here. 21% say they'll be concerned. 37% say they'll be scared.
This is what both candidates want. They want to be living there starting January 20th of next year. Florida has been going back and forth. Just changed again. It's only 11,000 vote lead just now. It changed.
Math on your feet. I like this.
The Empire State Building in New York City. Take a look at our running tally of the electoral vote. Anderson, this night is turning out to be a real nail-biter.
All along, the Trump campaign has been saying that Florida's a must-win for them.
Absolutely.
And I mean,
they can't win without it.
Donald Trump will carry the state of Florida.
You know, I'm guessing that the people in Brooklyn, I can see their fingers
That's
probably.
the Hillary Clinton headquarters.
Yeah, fingers probably bleeding because there's no more nail to bite.
I wouldn't call anything encouraging for Hillary Clinton at the moment, to be honest with you, my friend.
Wolf, the scene here is so different than it was a few hours ago when people were happy and relaxed. I have been looking around the room at people who are stone-faced. Some of them have been crying.
People have talked about a miracle. I'm hearing about a nightmare. It's hard to be a parent tonight for a lot of us. You tell your kids, don't be a bully. You tell your kids, don't be a bigot. You tell your kids, do your homework and be prepared. And then you have this outcome, and you have people putting children to bed tonight, and they're afraid of breakfast. They're afraid of, how do I explain this to my children? I have Muslim friends who are texting me tonight saying, should I leave the country? I have families of immigrants that are terrified tonight. This was many things. This was a rebellion against the elites. True, it was a complete reinvention of politics and polls, it's true. But it was also something else. We've talked about race. I mean, we've talked about everything but race tonight. We've talked about income, we've talked about class, we've talked about region. We haven't talked about race. This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president in part. And that's the part where the pain comes. And Donald Trump has a responsibility tonight to come out and reassure people that he is going to be the president of all the people who he insulted and offended and brushed aside. Yeah, when you say, you want to take your country back, you got a lot of people who feel that we're not represented well either. But we don't want to feel that someone has been elected by throwing away some of us to appeal more deeply to others. So this is a deeply painful moment tonight. I know it's not just about race. There's more going on than that. But race is here too. We got to talk about it.
Demonstrators nationwide are expected to march for a fifth straight day to protest Donald Trump's election. Tens of thousands marched in streets across the United States on Saturday. The protests held in big cities such as Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago, as well as smaller ones, were largely peaceful. But in Portland Saturday night, it turned violent. Police used flashbangs to disperse crowds. Several people were arrested, including 2 involved in a shooting that left 1 protester injured. DeMarco Morgan joins us now. He is in New York City near Trump Tower. DeMarco, tell us about the atmosphere there right now. Are there people gathering?
Well, Elaine, we've spotted about 5 protesters, believe it or not, at this hour. Not far from here because they have the sidewalks between 57th and 56th Street pretty much blocked off. But you and I both know, especially those who have lived here in New York City, that 5th Avenue is a bustling artery. So just the foot traffic and also the cars, the vehicles that are making their way down this place, it's a nightmare alone. If you look behind me, you can see the traffic has been, it's at a standstill now, but it has been brought down to 2 lanes from like 4 or 5. Even the buses are starting to have a tough time trying to squeeze through here to make their way down 5th Avenue. But even when you would think that things would lighten up, it's the complete opposite.
according to Kristen Welker and one senior official, the new acting, the NSA, the acting National Security Advisor, is General Keith Kellogg, who was the Chief of Staff. Michael Flynn has resigned. That has also been reported, I should add, by CNN tonight. Kristen Welker, our White House correspondent, reporting that tonight. She's basing that on a senior official telling her. Now, all the signs have been pointing to this for the last couple of hours, Brian. This dramatic decision, we reported on Nightly News at 6:30 tonight that the decision was now in President Trump's hands. This was after Sean Spicer told reporters at the White House around 5 o'clock that the president was evaluating the situation. That was an hour after Kellyanne Conway had said on MSNBC that the president had confidence in General Flynn. But clearly, this report that has since broken, that Sally Yates, the former acting attorney general, had warned General Flynn and members of the White House top team several weeks ago that there was a risk that the Russians could be blackmailing General Flynn with information about communications with General Flynn that he had not reported accurately to his colleagues. Brian?
Andrea, for folks just tuning in who haven't followed this story as you and I have today, let me see if I get this right. New sanctions come out in the waning days and hours, really, of the Obama administration. And we expect Russia and Putin to react angrily, as they usually do, but they don't. And the absence of a negative reaction causes American intel officials to look back through the intel that they take in all the time, that both sides know they take in all the time. Buried in that intel is a conversation between Mike Flynn, who is poised to be the National Security Advisor to the incoming president, but is then a civilian, a retired U.S. Army general, a conversation between him and the Russian ambassador. It is alleged that that conversation included what, Andrea?
Well, first of all, the conversation, the timing of it. It was on December 29th, although that was originally denied, but then acknowledged by General Flynn. It was on the same exact day that the Obama White House was announcing that they were kicking out 35 Russian diplomats, accusing them of espionage, and shutting down 2 major facilities, one in Maryland, one in Long Island. Now, usually it's one person kicked out and there's a tit for tat automatically. This is the protocol that goes back to the Cold War. You kick out a diplomat, another diplomat gets accused of espionage in the other country and gets thrown out. In this case, 35 diplomats were kicked out, told to go packing within 48 hours, and the Russians respond. Vladimir Putin responds by inviting American diplomatic children in Moscow to a Christmas party. So obviously, the counterintelligence folks at the FBI would have had their antennae up and go back, as you point out, over what could have happened in those times. And they start looking back over the normal listening in, the intercept of the ambassador and other diplomatic Russian diplomats in Washington. And lo and behold, what do they find? But many communications, not just one, but several communications and texts between the Russian ambassador and Mike Flynn, who is poised to be the National Security Advisor. He had already been announced. He was meeting with diplomats, and there's nothing wrong with them meeting and getting to know the new people, getting to know the diplomats who are eager to learn as much as they can about Donald Trump, because, frankly, they didn't expect that he was going to be elected. They thought they knew all the people they needed to know around Hillary Clinton. So it's a scramble among diplomats in Washington, and certainly being tasked by their heads of state and their foreign ministers back home. Tell me everything you can about Michael Flynn. So it's pretty intensive. But Michael Flynn had a prior relationship with the Russians. He knew them well. And going back to 2015, he was in Moscow sitting at a gala dinner, having been paid to attend by RT, the Russian propaganda arm, sitting next to Vladimir Putin at a black-tie dinner. That already causing a lot of buzz in diplomatic circles when he was named National Security Advisor. Donald Trump, very transparently during the campaign, had said he wants better relations with Vladimir Putin. But intriguingly, he has never criticized Putin. He criticizes other leaders, but before, during the transition, and since, he has nothing negative to say about Vladimir Putin. This sanctioning was met with nothing but sort of a laugh, a smile, and an invitation to a Christmas party by Vladimir Putin. That set off a lot of bells, and obviously the counter-espionage people in the FBI had their task, and there was this report, now we learn, from Sally Yates, the acting AG, and she has subsequently been fired by her refusal to enforce the immigration order. But now a lot of questions are being asked. Why was she fired? When did she tell the White House? Who in the White House did she tell?
Speaking of timing, I mean, I think it was Peter Baker who asked the question today on Twitter, who was the White House aide that came up with the idea of having the Russians at the White House the day after Comey's pushed out? I mean, what are people saying at the White House?
And that's incredibly problematic, right? Not only you have this meeting with Lavrov at the White House, but it also comes, of course, as, this is an FBI director who was investigating. The FBI has been, continues to, presumably, be investigating potential ties between Trump associates and Russian agents. What's really interesting is watching kind of how this is playing out on Capitol Hill, actually, because you do have at least a handful of Republicans who are also raising lots of questions surrounding the timing of this firing, surrounding the way in which it was conducted, not questioning the president's ability to fire his FBI director, but the kind of surrounding circumstances. And that's really significant because you do have Republicans on Capitol Hill who are very concerned about Russian meddling in the election, who are conducting their own congressional investigations into this, and also who saw the FBI investigation not only into collusion but into Russian meddling as well as, really key and trying to be fair. And so it's something that has kind of scrambled some alliances on Capitol Hill. Yes, you have Democrats who are kind of towing the party line, opposing this decision, but they have also raised concern about what this means for the status of the investigation, and you have some Republicans who agree with that premise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart. I rise today with a sense of responsibility and duty to the people who have elected me, a sense of duty to this country, a sense of duty to the Constitution of the United States of America. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
Just want to be clear, if in fact these allegations, reported first in the New York Times and now being confirmed by CNN and other news organizations, if these allegations, Senator, are true, are we getting closer and closer to the possibility of yet another impeachment process?
Reluctantly, Wolf, I have to say yes, simply because obstruction of justice is such a serious offense. And I say it with sadness and reluctance. This is not something that I've advocated for, or the word has not passed my lips in this whole tumultuous 3 or 4 months. But if indeed the president tried to tell the director of the FBI who worked for him that he should drop an investigation, whether it was Michael Flynn or whether it was some investigation that had nothing to do with Russia or politics or the election, that's a very serious matter.